The dominator of the universe sets his sights on the Viltrum Empire. Can he invade successfully? Will he finally find a worthy opponent to satisfy his thirst for battle? Is it another dud? Or does he get ripped to pieces? We'll go over that today. Sup folks, Robot here, and with the Viltrumite War taking place this season, I thought it'd be prescient to swap out Mark and the coalition of planets for Boros and his dark matter pirates. We'll go over what would have happened if they tried to invade Viltrum. Following the timeline of events, this is largely going to pit the roughly 50 remaining Viltrumites against Boros' generals, while the main man himself faces off against the Grand Regent. I'll run through the hypothetical while assessing the scaling for both sides to justify my reasoning for who comes out on top. Well, that's enough yapping, so let's get into it. Right off the bat, Boros' ship appears over the capital of planet Viltrum. Let's say they forgot to fix the planetary defense software that missed the Scourge virus, because they killed their developer. Working for fascists doesn't tend to end well. Immediately, all Viltrumites on the planet are going to head straight for the ship to kill the invaders. Melzagard, Goribas, and some of Boros' other unnamed fighters are going to jump out to engage the Viltrumites who are going to head for the ship. But let's focus on the main event first. Thragg is going to get on board, and he'll make short work of Garrigan Shoop. I don't think there's too much explanation needed there. Then he'll come face to face with Boros. Boros is going to give his usual spiel about seeking strong opponents, and is impressed because Thragg beat Garrigan Shoop, who was one of his stronger generals. Thragg is going to laugh because if he thinks Garrigan Shoop was strong, then Boros must be weak. TLDR, this is going to piss Boros off enough to skip fighting in his armor, and so he would immediately enter his released form. Honestly, this was the best way to get around scaling armored Boros, because he genuinely has no scaling whatsoever. Anyways, Boros would immediately launch himself at Thragg, and this is where we're going to start assessing their scaling. Regarding AP, this is generally well established in both fandoms. Most scale Boros from planetary to large planetary based off the collapsing star roaring cannon in the anime, and Thragg from small planetary to possibly baseline planetary based off the planet Viltrum destruction. Now there are metrics to get them higher or lower, but realistically anyone you can make for one can be made for the other. You want to use the anime guidebook where the collapsing star roaring cannon is placed at star level, then you can bring up the solar disk scaling. You want to upscale Boros over Blast, because it was mentioned humanity's strongest versus the strongest in the universe, and maybe that includes Blast's compadres who could scale to him. Then you can bring up Omni-Man scaling to Supreme, or an Invincible variant killing Spawn. The point is that we should stick to the planetary ranges for both, as it's consistent without having to use what in my opinion are outlier feats or statements. Okay, with that down, the main issue is that Boros' AP is only that high while using the collapsing star roaring cannon. His casual punches in his released and meteoric burst forms don't scale anywhere near that high. And to make matters worse, there isn't a concrete metric of how much more powerful his beam is to his other forms' attacks. My best guess is to use orders of magnitude differences between them. To explain, we'll start at the top with the collapsing star roaring cannon. You know what, I'll just abbreviate it to CSRC. Goddamn anime attacks into superfluous verbosity. This attack in my opinion should be orders of magnitude above his punches in his meteoric burst form when he releases all his energy in one shot. Possibly an order of magnitude only when he releases only some of his energy in the attack instead. This is because he believed he could one-shot Saitama after he had basically tanked hundreds of his punches. That should place his punches in his meteoric burst form somewhere in the low end of planetary. Using a similar logic, we can place his released form Blast somewhere in the higher ends of small planetary, and his released form punches somewhere in the lower to mid ends of small planetary. So much like how Mark and Nolan could barely scratch Thragg during their first encounter, Boros' punch would only annoy him, and he'll bitch smack him away.
Oh!
Boros, being the fight junkie he is gonna be hyping him up, and Thragg is gonna be like,
oh my god, bro.
Nonetheless, he'll fire off his blast at Thragg, who would elect to tank it cause he thinks Boros ain't all that. The attack should have enough AP to damage Thragg, enough to make him actually take this seriously. And Boros, seeing Thragg relatively unscathed from the attack, is gonna kick it into high gear with Meteoric Burst. Now that the two of them are actively going all out, it's pertinent to address the speed scaling. For the high tier speedsters like Flashy Flash, Monster Garo, and Platinum S, they cap out at a couple times FTL based off the constellation forming during the Monster Association arc. And you can at bare minimum place Boros in that same speed bracket, considering he was stated that Saitama was the only one present when he showed up that could beat him, and Flashy Flash was around back then. However, when you want to address Viltrumite speed scaling, there's generally no accepted baseline. You have Invincible fans arguing that they're MFTL because they can travel interstellar distances in weeks, And the reaction speed should scale to this, as well you can't drive a 60 mph vehicle if your reaction speed maxes out at 30 miles an hour, you'd run into a wall. Plus we have on-panel showings of them dodging starships which can move at such speeds. Whereas OPM fans would counter by saying that the MFTL Mark and Nolan can still get tagged by Earth-based heroes and villains like the immortal Powerplex Doc Seismic, who have hypersonic to massively hypersonic movement speed feats at best. Now where do I land? Okay, let me get this out of the way first. I think it's a bit rich from OPM fans to say that we have to ignore the MFTL speed feats because of some Earth-based anti-feats, when we have a number of OPM speed, AP and durability scaling that have anti-feats. Would you say that Monster Garo and Sage Centipede are hypersonic at best? If sniper rounds fired from hundreds of feet away could tag Sage Centipede before he could close his jaw a couple feet. Or Flashy Flash has pillow hands, because his sword which can withstand the force of his swings and be broken by the weight of boulders. We can have a field day going panel by panel in both series to try and point out possible anti-feats from the most irrelevant of things. Most of these authors don't think too deeply about the specifics in some of these situations, which I will agree is unfortunate because power scalers like us notice and it does tend to break your immersion. In general, if there were only one or two MFTL feats, compared to an abundance of massively hypersonic anti-feats, this logic would make sense. But basically anytime Mark or the others are in space, they're performing these MFTL feats, so you're basically saying we should ignore like a third of the series. Now how do I remedy this? It's a bit of headcanon, but hear me out. I broadly classify speed into three categories: travel speed, perception speed, and reaction speed. Travel speed, as the name implies, is how fast you can cover a distance. I have Viltrumites at MFTL in this category. To be specific, MFTL when in space, and possibly when not holding back, FTL in atmosphere. Then, perception speed. This is how fast you can perceive your surroundings. This should scale to their travel speed, as they need to see where they're going when they're flying through space. Plus, if you want on-panel showings of this, you have Oliver perceiving a planet whiz by when on transit in an MFTL starship. Finally, reaction speed, which is how fast you can physically move your arms, legs, or body parts with your muscles or whatever equivalent it is, in general to attack, block, parry, or counterattack. This is where you can make reductions from the anti-feats. While they can be dropped from the MFTL ranges, they should still be relativistic to just over light speed here, considering that they're faster than relatively fodder characters like Duplicate, who can physically dodge laser-like and lightning-based attacks. Heroes like the Immortal having Mach 3 travel speeds doesn't downplay them here as well, because Mach 3 is only his travel speed. His perception and reaction speed should scale higher. That said, how do I explain things like Alan dodging the MFTL starship? Well, he flew out of the way. I specifically pointed out that reaction speed involves translocating of body parts using your muscles, but flight is something they do mentally. It's not controlled by muscles or tendons. It's kind of the difference between being able to spawn force fields to block incoming attacks, or having to raise both arms to do the same. You can mentally activate the force fields quicker than you can move your limbs. Now there might be one or two showings that go against my metric, but in general it's very consistent with the rest of the show, so it's what I'll use for the Viltrumites. Similarly on the same scale, I have Boros at FTL for all three categories. With that cleared up, we can head back to the hypothetical. Boros and Thragg will rush in to deliver a strike where their blows will be relatively even. Following that, they'll go through a number of clashes throughout the ship. Eventually the difference in reaction speed will show, as Boros, who would have had the advantage in most of the clashes, will land a critical blow, launching Thragg skyward. Then he'll charge up a CSRC to finish the fight, as his regeneration and Thragg's Viltrumite hardiness, or DC of smart atoms, makes it really tedious to put down each other with just fists only. Being a more projectile-based attack, Thragg will be able to avoid it using just his flight speed. Boros, who would be the one instigating the fight, will find it interesting that Thragg could evade his attack and will rush in for CQC again. And Thragg at this point will pull out the old Viltrumite special, the spear through the torso, and Boros would quite literally run into it. Boros in close would commend Thragg and grab a hold of him to prevent him dodging, then he'll release another CSRC, and point blank it will kill Thragg. So Boros takes the dub over Thragg. That said, the premise was whether he could successfully invade the Viltrum Empire. While he was fighting Thragg, his other subordinates would have gotten folded by the other Viltrumites. For people on this level, they're basically fodder. Murata mentioned that Melzigard, Gueribas, and Gariganship altogether would find it difficult to beat Orochi. and Orochi at best scales to one of the high tier Viltrumites when using the Gaia cannon, and there's like 50 of them. So you're left with Boros versus roughly 50 Viltrumites. Individually, he should be superior to any one of them, and frankly some of the weaker ones could get one shot by basic punches, but the stronger ones like Anissa, Krieg, Lucan, and even Thula can damage him just like Thragg could. This is cause like 5 of them alone were enough to KO Thragg himself, and they should all be fast enough to evade the CSRC. Even if he blew up the planet, they can all survive in space. Eventually Boros is gonna start gassing out as meteoric burst drains his life force, and he'll get ripped to shreds by the Viltrumites. So to answer the premise, can Boros successfully invade the Viltrum Empire? No. Honestly, that was a really fun hypothetical battle to script, albeit having to find the panels that properly showed the action was a pain in the ass. I hope it turned out well enough though. Also, I really wanted to get out the section regarding speed and consistency of feats. Honestly, I'll probably need to make a video on the topic in general, but that should serve as a good summary for now. Anyways, what do you guys think? Did I cook or not? Let me know your arguments and conclusions in the comments. Well, that's all. Peace out.